Welcome, everybody, to the Heart Full of Hallmark podcast. I have the honor and joy of getting to talk to director Peter Sullivan, who has a brand new film coming out on Netflix that is not very Hallmark friendly, but it has a Hallmark star in it. It has a Hallmarky type story in it, sort of. It's a rom-com in a way, and that is The Married Gentleman. So, how are you doing, Peter?
I'm great, thank you.
It's great to have you on. So, what can you tell us about this brand new film without giving any spoilers away? What's this movie about?
Well, like you said, it is very kind of the prototypical Hallmark style story where a woman, a professional dancer from the city, ends up coming home to her hometown and helping the family business, and comes up with a gimmick to try to save the family business. And that gimmick happens to be a quote-unquote male dance review, which, as Chad says, asked, is it men taking their clothes off? She said, no, it's men taking their shirt off. And so they debate whether or not it actually counts as stripping. But not to give too much away, but the show becomes popular in the small town.
I wonder why. I wonder why it becomes popular. I'm sorry, people. I don't look like that.
Neither do I.
People look like that. I mean, this is legitimately ridiculous. I mean, it takes a lot of work to look like that.
Yes, it does.
And I'm sure it took a lot to shoot that in a way that didn't feel too risky.
Right.
And didn't show too much.
Very early on, we had a conversation with the producers, with Netflix, in terms of where we were going with that and how far we wanted to go. And I think we all agreed that, we wanted to make this movie, family friendly might be too much, but family appropriate, where, if your child would have happened to walk into the room, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be the end of the world. They might be confused, but we made that conscious decision that we were going to stay, firmly in the PG-13 world, and that was the conversation creatively with the producers, with Netflix, and then with the choreographer. And when we were developing the choreography, we had a very honest and open conversation in terms of, what kind of things we didn't want to do, and we figured nothing below the belt for the most part, and just wanted it to be, maybe a little sexy, but really fun. And that was the big thing, is all the dance numbers are fun, funny, entertaining, and that's the way we did it. There's no lap dancing or, anything like that. Although some of the background might have been disappointed during that. But, it's funny. I often wondered, like, what did the background performers that were recruited to be in this movie showing up? Oh, we're going to be this Christmas movie, and they're showing up at this location, and they're sitting down, and then all of a sudden it's like, pow, action. That must have been something. I wonder what they knew going into it.
My co-host, oh my lord, if they knew where this was shooting, especially Amanda, she would have called off of work, flew there, and begged for just a extra role. I mean,
well, we God bless her, a production coordinator, a UPM. She was like, I have to be in one of those scenes. So you see her in the movie prominently cheering on the show because she was adamant that she had to be in it. And who am I to say no, right?
And I'm sure that there was no acting from her involved whatsoever. That was all just pure enjoyment.
Uh, no, but that was the thing. I mean, there was such an energy in the room. And again, I'll go back to the entertaining, to the fun. It was so much fun shooting those scenes, and everyone just got caught up in it. And it was just. I've never done a movie that was so dance centric.
Mhm.
So much fun. I didn't expect, just from the rehearsal, and the guys worked so hard, and the routines, and by the time we were shooting, the camaraderie was fantastic, and the energy was electric, and it was just so much fun
Mhm.
shooting that stuff. And by the time we finished all the performing scenes, and it was like, now we actually don't have to go shoot the movie stuff.
Yeah.
The way it was, like it's just not going to be the same, because okay, playtime's over. It was so much fun, so much fun.
So one last thing with these specific scenes.
Yeah.
Um, Not to really disappoint anybody, but how much of it is actually in the film?
I'm sorry. What do you mean?
Like the strip scenes and the dance scenes. Like how much of these scenes are
Oh,
actually in this in
there
this?
there are five. There are five dance numbers in the film, and before, all the songs, everything were written specifically for the film.
Mhm.
And so it started, basically, I had the script, and there were five dance scenes in there that weren't really, I mean, other than, it would say something like the guys dance. And that
Mhm.
was about it. And then so it was like, okay, so I creatively sat down and said, okay, I need five dance scenes. Let me come up with five completely different styles of music, so we can create five different styles of dance. So I had the concept, I ran it by the choreographer, she signed off on it, and I said, okay, so we're going to do a number that's very percussive, heavy, river dance, stomp, that kind of thing. Then we're going to do one that is country, so it's a very country line dancing style. Then we're going to do one that's 80s. So we created a new 80s sounding track. That would probably be the most fun of all of it,
I'm so
because
excited for that one.
we were playing, I mean, and not only did the styles of music changed, the type of dancing changed. So that was part of the fun. Was there's not one dance scene in this movie that's like any of the others. They're all very unique, and that's true with the dancing. It's true with the music, the energy, and even the way we shot them are different. The country line dancing is obviously very much about the steps and the feet, and the stuff. The 80s is embracing the cheese of it all.
Yep.
And then there was a jazz number, which is sort of in the style of, say, like a Buster Poindexter kind of thing. And that, very much into the canes and the top hats. So the props are different for each one. And then the finale is hip hop. So we got to do a hip hop version, and it was so much fun, because now we're doing flips, and there's like a dance off between two of the characters. So each number is totally different than the one before it, and it just kind of keeps the audience on their toes.
So moving away from the obvious scenes,
Mhm.
what is your favorite scene that you shot for this specific film? What was it? The spoiler alert, the big kiss or something like that. But what was your favorite scenes to shoot in the actual film?
Um, I would say the dance numbers for sure were fantastic, and they're the dance number we haven't talked about, and that is the one that opens the film,
Okay.
because our main character is a Broadway performer. So in order to set up her journey, I wanted to see her perform. That's the still right there from that performance, and that was amazing for me, because we had 10 dancers up on the stage doing this incredibly choreographed, Busby Berkeley style. Everyone's in sync, and it was so much fun. And we shot, we shot way more than we could use in the film. So, I mean, my only regret is, you won't get to see everything we shot because, it would probably be the whole first half of the film. But it was so wonderful to shoot in the stage. We were using this old this old playhouse in a small town and out here in the suburbs of LA, and it was a great old theater. And we were shooting on the stage, and then we went backstage and we shot the stuff in the actual dressing rooms and behind the scenes and everything. And it was just so great to take the audience into this world. That being kind of a sort of a newfound Broadway junkie. For me, it was fun to show that, because that's something I've never done before. I mean, there's a lot I've never done before in this movie, but I had a lot of fun with that Broadway material.
So was this a offer film, or did you have to like pitch this with the writer? What?
Okay.
How
development process? Yeah. No, it was an interesting development process. So the movie was written by Marla Sokoloff, who's also in the film. And she is, I met her, we did a movie for Lifetime years ago called Road Home for Christmas. Actually, she had done a film before that that I had produced, but my first time working with her directly was Road Home for Christmas. And it was a lot of fun. It was about dueling piano players who are in competition with one another and kind of have this rivalry on and off stage. And they end up having to share a car and go on a road trip for Christmas. And they are dueling in every sense of the word. And not to give anything away, but they might fall in love by the end. That tends to happen in these films. But
maybe.
During the course of doing that film, I learned that Marla was very interested in directing. She was very interested in writing. She had been working on both. And so we started a very collaborative, sort of creative relationship. And, we went on to her directing for my company that I work with. And she was directing films that I had written. And this was an opportunity for me to direct something that she had written. So we came up with the story, and I wrote kind of a basic outline of what I wanted the movie to be. We gave it to her. She wrote a fantastic script. And at that point, we didn't really know what was going to happen with it. And then Netflix came on board, and the rest is history. It came together, from concept to screen, pretty fast. I mean, it was under a year for sure between the time that we came up with the story and the time that we were shooting. So that was great.
Did you have anything to do with the casting? Did you help cast Chad and Britt and Marla?
Yeah. So it's funny. I remember with Marla, we're going over the script and we're having a script called and thing. And I think on one of the calls, I finally just said, "Hey, I don't know if the thought occurred to you while you were writing it, but there's this part that I think you'd be good for." And and she stepped right in. She was very excited. Chad was one of the very first names that came up, if not the first name that came up. And from that point forward, it was it was very much it was like, okay, we're going to do this, and then, well, who are we going to get to play opposite him? And I love Britt. I love her work. She is she has such an enthusiasm and sweetness and energy on screen. And it's like, okay, once let's see, I don't know if she'll do this, but let's try and see what happens. And she accepted. And both of them were just so wonderful, and it was such a great experience, not just because of the shoot, but also the rehearsal time. They all had to work really hard. I mean, Britt had some dance experience, Chad had none. So, I mean, not only did they have to learn the choreography, he had to learn to dance.
Yep.
So we were setting him up with movement coaching and dance coaching and all of the stuff. And they had to work weeks before we even started shooting, just to learn how to, how did the dancer move? How do you approach this? And it was kind of an interesting experience for me because, I was there for that journey. And nobody put me on the spot and made me get up there, but I certainly watched it all. And it was such an interesting journey for sure.
What is one word that you could say to best describe The Merry Gentleman?
Fun.
Fun.
I mean, it was fun. I want you to just, if I've done my job right, this movie should just be a blast to watch. My hope.
And this film comes out very, very soon. We are recording this about 2 weeks beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie, The Merry Gentleman, comes out on Netflix, I believe November 20th at 3 a.m. And I cannot wait to watch this. Netflix, I'm hoping you send me a screener.
Well, 4:30 in the morning, I want to hear from you. Listen, I know it's an hour and a half long, so 40 minutes.
Just an 4:30. Hey, Peter, I watched the movie. Now I'm going back to bed. But it comes out on November 20th, and I cannot wait to see this film. This film has been pushed to high heaven, and this film is getting a lot of press.
Yes, it has, and something new. We haven't seen this before.
Yes, and normally Netflix does these cleaner types of films. So were they on board with this raunchier type of thing, or what was there any like pushback to make this a little more clean per se?
Like I said, we pretty much had all the creative conversations going into it. So, with the choreographer, I mean, even before, perhaps even before the songs were written, because I wanted to involve her in that process and make her part of the song, because the rhythm and everything was so important. We talked about, well, what's off limits. And with them, the only thing, we finished a film, we showed it to them, and maybe there were like 2 shots. They were just like, can you just, not use that shot, or, that maybe, use the close up there instead. But for the most part, it wasn't designed to be particularly suggestive or raunchy.
Okay. So moving on to the films that my audience loves and just wants me to ask about.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on to the movies that are now on Hallmark Plus. You've made multiple of these particular films.
Mm-hmm.
Which one is your favorite as a viewer?
As a viewer, I would say, and I'm not sure which films I've done that are on Hallmark Plus versus the Hallmark Channel, but I can say my experience working with Hallmark has been fantastic every time. They're absolutely wonderful to work with. They know their brand really well, and they are really good at making sure, you're always cognizant of, the lines that you're coloring in. Which is great because it makes my job easier if I know they're very specific on what the target is, and that goes from the entire process, from story to script to screen to editing. That's been a wonderful part of the experience working with them. It's very hard to pick a baby, because it's like they're all my children.
Yeah.
The one I feel like almost responsible to say, I have to say, because it's the one that's the most successful, is Christmas Under Wraps.
Mm-hmm.
But that also happened to be my first Hallmark film.
Yep.
That I directed for them. I hadn't directed for the network before. So I've certainly, it was a learning experience for me. And so I feel like every time I do a film, the next one has it had just progressed better. They to me, the craft gets better. I've gotten better, whether it's better with the camera, better with the actors, better with the script, whatever. So, I see a progression. So it's odd to say the first one because I did, but that would be the one that has certainly opened the most doors for me and created the most opportunity for me, just because it was so wildly successful. And being my first Hallmark film, my first time working with, somebody like Candace and everything, I just didn't know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
So when it reached that level of success, I was just kind of taken aback. I didn't know that was possible. I didn't realize that was,
those numbers were crazy.
they were crazy, and it was still sort of surreal. Because I still remember to this day that we were airing opposite the premiere of Grumpy Cat Christmas on Lifetime, and they were promoting the heck out of Grumpy Cat. And I remember I was so concerned that I was going to get defeated by Grumpy Cat, and history showed different, but that was a wild ride, that movie. And it was so, I mean, the experience of making that movie, I just think back to some of the things that we did and we went through. It's like, yeah, I wouldn't do that again. I wouldn't have made that choice. But it was kind of like, hey, let's go put on a show, and then that show happened to become a hit. And it's like, oh, okay, cool.
Well, that film is my favorite film that they've ever aired. Back in 2014, I believe, that movie was pushed to high heaven, and first time like Candace Cameron Bure as a doctor. That's what really intrigued me. So what is it she like as a person, as an actor, and just as a human?
Wonderfully warm. She knows, she knows, like Hallmark, she knows her brand as well. She knows what her fans are interested in, what they want to see. She has a very specific style, and there's a very specific ingredients that make a Candace Cameron Bure film. And she's very collaborative in creating that that product with you. And again, I was, because it was my first Hallmark film, it was still kind of early in that stage of my career. So, I was learning, and, she was very, very helpful to me and patient with me. And we got through, and, she is, again, a wonderful person. She, she takes her fans, she takes her faith very seriously. It's interesting. I ran into her several years later at church. We were at the same church, just randomly. It's like, oh, hey, So she's fantastic, and even that was still kind of early in her. I mean, she had a couple Hallmark successes, but Fuller House had not been done yet. As a matter of fact, I believe it was on our set that I first found out that Fuller House was in development. So that was that early on. So it was sort of like you were watching. It felt like I had this odd, front row seat to a bunch of, scrappy underdogs that were about to take flight.
And we can't talk about this film without the sequel. So not to get into any of the heat or the drama or anything, but if you can say, was she attached to the sequel, and did the sequel story change in any way, and how did you get the lovely Jodie Sweetin on board?
Okay, so we were developing the sequel, and at that point, it hadn't. I don't believe it had been publicly announced yet, but Candace had made the decision to go over to GAC, and so the film was kind of our project we kind of had to work with that, that she wasn't going to be Hallmark anymore. So we had ideas of what we wanted to do, and knowing, not really knowing all of the specifics at that point, because like I said, I don't believe it had been publicly announced at that point. We thought, okay, we want to do this movie. But there's we have to work within the politics of the business, and we still we still love Garland, would love to go back to that world, and we think there's more stories to tell there. What can we do?
Mm-hmm.
And then so knowing that there was a political situation, it was just, okay, well, let's come up with a story that we can do.
Mm-hmm.
And that more or less, how we approached it.
And how did you get Jodie on board of this film? Was she like a first option? Was there a audition?
No,
There multiple people.
We had the story, and at first it was like, okay, well, who can we get back?
Mm-hmm.
So we talked to a bunch of the cast members from the first film, and okay, well, we know we're going to get this handful of characters to return. So now let's come up with a story to involving these characters, because now we know what we can do. And okay, here's the story. Okay, now we know, and now we need a female lead. Who are we gonna go to? And the producer brought up Jodie, and I was like, great. Everyone that I know that worked with her, a wonderful thing to say, and
Mm-hmm.
it was great, and sure, let's go do this movie with Jodie. And it was an interesting film because we were both, it's about an inn, as you know,
Mm-hmm.
and we were both shooting and staying at that inn. So it had a very summer campy vibe, because we were living and working in the same place. And my commute to work every day was about 25 seconds by foot.
Yep.
I would just walk down the hall and into the lobby, and all right, action.
Way different from anything else, where it's like 30 minutes down the road, and then
and we were shooting in winter. And I remember we had hired our usual snow team that comes in and does our fake snow.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember waking up one morning, and I opened up the windows and I saw that it was a blizzard outside. And I called my assistant director. I said, look, I don't know what we're scheduled to shoot today, but we're shooting all the exteriors right now. Tell everybody that we are going outside. And so I made the cast and crew go out in the snowstorm and shoot.
Oh no.
But it was real, and it was so real that obviously, Mother Nature, the snow is never constant. It ebbs and flows, and so we had to go in digitally and consistently even out the snow. So it was snowing the same amount on each piece of coverage.
Yeah.
But and these are just funny behind the scenes stuff. But that again, it was kind of a little bit of it's a scrappy underdog movie. That we were shooting in winter in this inn in the in a very small town in Utah, and I wanted to make sure that experience ended up on the screen.
Mm-hmm. One cast member, as soon as I heard, I'm like, they're doing a sequel to Christmas Under Wraps.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you have to get Hattie back. That was the first thing that came to mind. I'm like, Hattie needs to be in it. She was part of the soul of that film. I mean, what is Paige like as a person? Because on screen, it seems like she's just such a sweetheart and warms up an entire room. What is Paige like?
That's her. I don't know where Paige ends and Hattie begins. They are one and the same. That is exactly, from the moment you meet her, that's exactly who she is. Love Paige. She's such a wonderful part, and like you, I think that the first sentence is, okay, well, we're going to go back to Garland, and the second sentence is, how do we put Hattie into this? And so the minute we started thinking of the story, it was like, okay, well, Patty needs we got to advance Patty's story. Let's give Hattie, Hattie a new a new restaurant, or and advance her story. She had to, and then we gave her a little love interest. It's like, well, what didn't we do with Hattie before? And it's funny, the character Hattie is based on a real person. When I was a kid, we would go on vacation up to the White Mountains in New Hampshire every year, and the bubbly, spunky woman that ran the snack bar in that resort was named Hattie. And when we were working on the script for Christmas Under Wraps, I was like, I wanted that kind of spunky personality to work in the diner, and naturally I thought, well, it's Hattie.
Mm-hmm. So one more for this film.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Murray, that man is a legend.
Yes,
and he's in one of the greatest films ever made, Christmas Vacation.
Mm-hmm.
So what is he like, and how did he come on board?
Well, I want to show you in my office over here. There is a Caddyshack poster that he signed for me. So that's you gotta I gotta give prop to that. So not only is he a talented actor, but a gifted writer as well. I don't know if a lot of people know that he actually wrote Caddyshack based on the experiences of him and his brother working as caddy back in the day. Brian is a wonderful person, and again, it's kind of hard to tell where the character and the actor, because they're sort of one and the same. Mm-hmm. I've worked with him a couple times. He was in another movie I did several years later with Mayim Bialik, where he played this sort of like Santa Claus, again, kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge mm-hmm. kind of character, because he brings such a twinkle and joy to his performance. I love him.
Let's move away from the holidays, mm-hmm. and let's move on to the film right behind you, Miss Brenda Song. I grew up with her, on multiple things, and to see her do a rom-com, I'm like, I have to see this, and she delivered. What was it like to get her, and how is she on set, and as just as like a friend? What is she like?
Well, okay, so interestingly, the first film I did with her was a thriller called Secret Obsession for Netflix, which is about as far from a rom-com as you could get.
Yeah.
If you've seen the movie, she basically spent it not unlike Misery, where more or less she spends most of the movie tied up and tortured. So not too much rom or com in that scenario. But that was the first film we did together. So for me, it was great to finally get to do a film like Love Accidentally with her, where I felt I knew she was a great actress, mm-hmm. but I wanted to play into the comedic side. I mean, the wonderful sense of timing and chemistry, mm-hmm. and just comedic presence, and knowing how to deliver a line or a funny look or all of that kind of stuff that she had all of the experience doing before we worked together. Mm-hmm. The joy of seeing a completely different side of her on Love Accidentally. And it was interesting, when we did Love Accidentally, she was at the time she was pregnant with her child, with Macaulay, and so there was a little bit of hiding that, but I knew that her personality, her presence, everything would just make it so worth it, and just a wonderful person, and it was a treat to get to work with her twice.
And I have to ask, moving away from her,
Mhm.
Her husband. What is he like? He was a child star,
Mhm.
and what is he like now?
I've only met him twice.
Okay.
So I, he come to, it's funny. I think the mistake that people make with child stars, and I've worked with quite a few now. I mean, including,
Mhm.
from Candace to Jody to to Brenda.
Mhm.
I've worked, Tatiana,
Yeah.
who's in Fresh Prince. I mean, I've worked with a lot of people who got their start at a very young age.
Mhm.
And I think, the one thing you just have to remember is, they were kids. And, I'm not the person that I was at 9 or 10.
Nope.
Hopefully, some people might disagree. But, you have to remind yourself that they're not 10 anymore. And, so, they're never, you're never going to be sitting there with Kevin McAllister.
No.
You're sitting there with a very mature, cultured young man who travels and talking about experiences that they had in Paris and Parisian foods and that kind of stuff. We're not ordering a large cheese pizza just for me.
Yeah.
So that
Which I mean, let's be honest here. As a fan who grew up with both films multiple times, whenever I see a pizza, I'm like, Little Nero's, or a big cheese, or a pizza,
yeah.
like Tim Curry says, which is
Mhm.
fantastic.
Yeah.
But I love that now he's more embracing that side of his life,
Mhm.
and doing a tour uh with the other stars. What were they like on set? What was there anybody who was a little bit more like bratty, or were all of them more just warm on these family films? And has there been any one, not to name names, who's been a little bit like unruly, or pushing back on a specific line or a story?
I yeah, I mean, look, everyone has people that they've worked with that that may not be their favorite,
Mhm.
coworker, that kind of stuff. But I just overall the course of my career, I would say the positives far outweigh the negative, and everyone that we've talked about has been absolutely fantastic. And I mean, I've done so many films with Tatiana now.
Mhm.
I mean, literally, the first film I did with her, I as a director, I want to say was even before Christmas Under Wraps. So it's been a very long time. She's been a collaborator and now actually working on a project now together that she's a producer on. So again, I love having the like Marla. You just have these creative collaborations that just go on and then just continue from one project to the next, and that's the best part. And I mean, Jody and I, she would always tease me because I had never seen The Dark Crystal at that point, and she thought that was an absolute travesty, and so I had to rectify that. And I finally did see The Dark Crystal. I texted her and said, I finally watched it. I finally watched it. Things like that. You just become friends with everybody, and you just try to stay in touch. And I mean, it's a little bit like a carnival where you go from town to town and you just set up, and then the carnival rolls on, and you leave that town behind and you go to the next town.
Mhm.
And I try to stay in touch with as many of the people as I can, because and I do work with a lot of the same people over and over again. People like Marla, like Tatiana, Brenda, that I've done multiple projects with, just because I love everybody, and
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully they feel the same way.
So as a film fan, has there ever been any, like, how how to say it best. Were you ever like starstruck from anybody that you've ever worked with, and how did you get past that
That's
as
a,
a filmmaker?
that's a good question. Very early on, I was kind of, I wouldn't say starstruck, but I was nervous
Hmm.
about working with actors, and so I was kind of reserved when talking to them, and I was like, it took me a few films to really start to warm up and just realize that um, no, you talk to him like you would anyone else,
Hmm.
and and it did it. I would say it took me 3 or 4 films to kind of get comfortable doing that,
Yeah.
and once I did, it made me a better director for sure. And you could everyone's coming to work. There's no need in putting anyone up on a special pedestal or anything, because we're all there to do the same job, and we're all there to roll up our sleeves and do what has to be done. And I found, by and large, everyone has that and that mentality. That having been said, as a film buff myself,
Hmm.
there are certain people that I just can't resist asking questions.
Yeah.
Whether talking to Billy Baldwin about working with Ron Howard
Yep.
on Backdraft, getting Vivica Fox to sign my Independent Day poster,
Yeah.
talking to Tom Arnold about True Lies. I remember I did a film with Rico Ross, who was one of the Marines and Aliens,
Hmm.
and asking him, all kinds of, all right, well, when you're shooting the scene, how did you do this? And what were they? And he's like, dude, that was like, 30 years ago. Well, I don't know. Why are you asking me these questions? Um, that kind of stuff, or Marina Sirtis about Star Trek.
Yeah.
And I remember one day, and to the life of me, I do not remember the backstory to this, but I remember being on set in Utah with Marina, and I just delivered her monologue from First Contact, and she just kind of looked at me like, "Okay, you're one of those." Okay, because that was one of my favorite Star Trek films, and it was just a funny thing. And it was, but she, again, they all have a sense of humor about this,
Yeah.
and you kind of learn the people that you can do that with, and the people that would prefer you don't.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they know what they're known for, and they're totally cool talking
Hmm.
about, if aliens and that kind of stuff. And then the people I've worked with, like, Lance Henriksen, where I wish I had talked more,
Yeah.
about, going back to Close Encounters. That was my first film. I think now I would have more comfortability asking him questions about that. But and then you run into people that just have, photographic memories. I had a long conversation with Eric Estrada on a
Ooh.
film that I wrote, and he remembered. He walked you through, when he was a background player before he even made it as a professional actor, and all of the people he'd worked with, and the sets that he was on, and the story. It's like, I couldn't tell you, what I had for dinner last night, but this guy told me, back in 1970, whatever, I was a background thing, this party scene, and this thing. And I'm just like, wow, where do you put all that information?
Well, with with me, right? Doing this now,
Mhm.
when you talk to a certain ones so many times, you get very friendly,
Mhm.
and the conversations are no longer like this with a
Mhm.
interview. It's more like you're talking to friends.
Mhm.
So like my last one, which I haven't seen yet, I have no idea how I'm going, what the thoughts gonna be about it. We went from talking about their films to their new film, and then I had the lead actor on for it, and somehow we got into uh, a medical talk, and then the presidents beforehand. But then the craziest one is, since we know each other now, and they're so close friends, we went from films to a colonoscopy for some reason, and then they went back and forth, and I'm like, Max, we got to get back to the film, sir. We're buddies, but I don't think my audience would really like to hear about that as a process and what goes in there. But
no, I have some experience in that area, but we're not going to talk about it.
Yeah,
I think you hit the nail on the head. That is the mark when you're bonded with an actor or you know. I mean, I'm on set 12 hours a day.
Yep.
That's, I mean, you do the math. That's more time than you're spending at home.
Yeah.
And so it's like I'm with my work family, you know, more than I'm with anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you have to have those kind of relationships. Otherwise, you're just going to be a very miserable person.
Yeah. And as a fan, like I had one on, and I am a wrestling nut, and she did a film with one, and I went, what is it like to work with this one guy? And she goes, oh my God, it was the craziest thing ever. They went to go and talk about that particular film, what the story was, what were they going to do, and just be friends for a little bit. Then all of a sudden, multiple people lean out of their moving cars and scream his name and wave hi. And she's never experienced that in her life. And she goes, you fans can get a little bit nuts, but we love you for it. Has there been anything like that with anything that's happened on your on your set with like a actor or something like that, where a extra gets a little bit too thrilled that they're next to them, won't leave them alone or something like that? Or
never had a problem with you know, inappropriate background in that manner. I've never had that concern. You know, I think the most interesting experience, going back to Christmas Under Wraps, and I had never seen this before or since, is, you know, we were filming in Utah, and we were filming in some pretty small towns, you know, in and around, like we were outside of Park City, and then we were outside of Provo, where we shot most of the movie. And it seemed inevitably that when we were filming, there would be a group of people across the street watching. And again, I've never, this before or since, I've never really encountered this, you know, whether it was, you know, whether we're in Utah, Connecticut, LA, any of the various places we filmed, where anyone would get that kind of fan base that Candace got. And I don't know how they knew we were there, other than they might have driven by and seen our Christmas decorations and our fake snow and all this stuff. Because again, we're shooting in summer.
Yeah.
So, you know, it seemed inevitably that whenever we were doing exterior scenes, especially, there would always be a group of people across the street watching. And they, you know, Candace was always very, you know, very appreciative, and would go over and say hi and sign autographs or take pictures. There was another time that happened. We were working with John Ratzenberger in Redondo Beach, and we were shooting on a pier, and there was a similar case where there were some people watching, and he went over and talked to them and stuff. But for the most part, the background performers are respectful. You know, we've had to let a few go because, you know, maybe they weren't good at following instructions, or they were talking when they shouldn't, or they weren't paying attention when they should, and that's not my department. I'm not responsible for dismissing unruly people, but you know, for the most part, you know, the interaction with the fans has been, just average people that notice we're filming. I just did a quick. I have a movie coming on Lifetime Movie Network this year. I have the exact date yet, but we were filming for 2 weeks in an airport, an actual functioning airport in Birmingham, Alabama. And apparently we were great entertainment while you're waiting for your flight. Come and watch what we're doing. You got nothing better to do except sit by the gate. Say, hey, let's go watch these people making a Christmas movie down over here.
Sure.
But we didn't. There were no in the airport. There was no recognizable. So anyone waiting to see Brad Pitt, we're going to be sorely disappointed.
Yeah. Well, all the stars, just Brad and Mario, it just everybody, and they were probably like, well, I guess that say Tom Hanks isn't here today, I guess. So I guess we're gonna watch, but one more film or series of films.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into the fun, just general ones.
Mm-hmm.
As a film, as a viewer, we love the dog films, but all the people I've talked to who have made films with dogs say there's two things you don't want to make a film with, and that's dogs and babies, because they're so unpredictable. So you've made a few of these dog films. So what is it like to work with them as a fan, but also as a director?
Well, it was interesting. My experience with the dog film started strictly on the production side, where I was producing. I didn't write or direct the first one. The second one, I did some work on the script, but also didn't direct. The third one, the director was not available, so I stepped up to direct. I was actually the first film that I ever directed. And the one thing you learn, and again, I mean, doing that film now would be a totally different ballgame, because not only was I learning to direct, I did, a lot of what I did just falls under the category of didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And that might have been a good thing. I'm not sure, because I was just very like, all right, well, we're going to get what we get, And the thing about the dog is, the best thing I could say is, as a director, is you're never going to do the same thing twice.
Yeah.
The dog doesn't know what a mark is. If you put a mark on the ground, if they go stand there, the dog might get near it and kind of sort of, in that general vicinity, but it's never going to be precise. The trick is never going to be performed the same way twice.
No.
So you just kind of have to learn, that you're going to shoot the dog coverage, and you kind of learn to block the scene around the dog. Well, the dog's going to do its thing, but everybody else has to be kind of independent, because we can't guarantee the dog will do the same thing the same way twice, and so nothing will edit together. So you kind of learn to kind of separate that. But that's something that I learned from doing. And I think, going into do a dog film now, I would do it differently and better. But that was kind of my learning curve. And I had observed how the other director did it and kind of learned from that. Okay, I get it. And it was just like, working, not unlike the dancing, you start working with the dog weeks before the film starts, so that you teach, okay, here are the gags that are in the script. What can the dog do? What can't the dog do? And then I remember going over into the trainer's house with the dog, and it's like, okay, well, these are the things that we're working on, and there's certain things the dogs are really good at, and certain things the dog's not so good at. And we create these scenarios around the dog's skills. And there were some really things that are really creative, and you just kind of build a sequence. I'll give you an example. There's a scene in the movie where the owner of the dog says, "Go get me a drink," to the dog, and the dog goes to the fridge. The dog opens the fridge. The dog grabs the can of soda. The dog closes the fridge and brings it to the guy. Well, in the movie, that's one continuous action, but you kind of have to break that up, where, okay, this shot, he sends the dog to the fridge. We get the dog jumping off the couch. That's one moment. Then the next moment is you're going to shoot the dog going and opening the door to the fridge. That's one moment. Now you're going to have the dog grab the can. That's another moment. Now you can have the dog close the fridge. That's another moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just learn to break it up. So you're not going to do a shot where the dog jumps off the couch, goes to the fridge, gets this, but you learn to break it up in a way that, in editing, it works.
Yeah.
And so it's just learning things like that. And then with babies, the only time I've actually worked with an actual infant is going back to Road Home for Christmas. She's trying to get home to her sister is having a baby. And so at the end of the movie, she gets to the hospital and the sister's giving birth, and we have this baby. And we had an infant. I don't know how many weeks old the baby was, but the baby was on the new side, just getting into the whole life thing,
Yep.
And, legally, the amount of time you have kids on set, and this is one of the reasons why they say don't work with kids. It's not that kids aren't great, because kids are actually wonderful.
Yeah.
But we have a job to do, and kids are very limited in the amount of time they can spend on a set. And so, a child under the age of, I think, 12, 10 to 12, of a 12-hour shoot day, you only have the kid for, let's say, 6 hours, and of that 6 hours, 3 hours is spent on set, and 3 hours are spent in quote unquote school working with the studio teacher.
Yep.
Well, when you're dealing with an infant, the amount of time on set is measured in not hours, but minutes.
Yeah.
Or seconds, literally.
Yeah.
So you have the baby, and then the baby has to go away, and now you do the rest of it with the what I call the American Sniper doll.
Yeah.
And you shoot literally everything you need with the baby for that literally seconds, and then then you do the rest without the baby. And then, like the dog, you learn to shoot. Okay, well, the baby's not going to be in every scene, every shot, because the baby can't be there. So how about we do the scene where the mama holds the baby for a moment, we get the baby coverage, and then the baby goes in the bassinet, and now we get the baby out of the picture. It's just being smart, like the dog. It's just being smart on how you break it up.
So moving away from your films, these are the fun questions that I love to ask everybody.
Mm-hmm.
As a viewer, what's your favorite film of all time?
I would, I go from to a couple different films, but the one I would say is the most meaningful to me is Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it when I was probably way too young. I did see it in the theater, so I'm not old. I talked to I believe I was in kindergarten at the time, and I talked to my dad somehow talked him into taking me to see that movie. And
he regretted it. No.
No, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, if you have a kid that's interested in film, really interested in film, you can't really look at film in terms of appropriateness, because you really want to foster a relationship with film and all types of films, and you're not going to be able to do that if you're limiting only to cartoons or only to family films or only to stuff. So, I was fortunate enough to that I was able to see movies like, whether it was Raiders of the Lost Ark or Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom or films like that, and even, going to see my first R-rated film in the theater, probably, in junior high, where it just opened up different types of films where, just because I was very interested in films and filmmaking. And, the Raiders of the Lost Ark was definitely, and then, because I was a child of much of the 80s, the standard Amblin catalog, whether it's films that Spielberg was directing or producing, like Back to the Future, Gremlins, Batteries Not Included,
E.T., stuff
E.T.
like that.
Yeah. So that was, I was definitely a genre film fan. So anything that was sort of fantasy, sci-fi, or fantasy adjacent,
Hmm.
I would say would be films that meant something to me. And then, later on, I started to realize there was such a thing as good films and bad films.
Yeah.
That's something that you don't really pick up on when you're young. All films are awesome. And when you're a kid, you can't tell the difference between Empire Strikes Back and Ice Pirates. But when
Yeah.
you get older, you start to see the lines a little better.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, my mom and dad were very secluded. Let's put it that way. I was stuck in a G, maybe a PG frame,
Mhm.
and then I turned like 12,
Mhm.
maybe 12, and I went to a video store, which is no longer there. Broke my heart, and I rented. I remember it was 2 films, and I got in so much trouble. And the first one I ever saw was, I believe it was Hot Tub Time Machine. That was all over the place, and I'm like, but it's about a hot tub, and there's a bear in it and stuff like that. So I rented it, and I got about 5 minutes into it, and I got in so much trouble. But then the other one, I don't know why my mom got so upset with me. It's The King's Speech.
Interesting.
And I went, okay, this is rated R for some language, and I'm about an hour into the 2-hour movie, and there's not one swear word.
Right.
And then there's one scene where he swears because he doesn't stutter when he swears. And it was that one scene where, from the other room, my mom screamed at me, "Turn that movie off! That's filthy!" And I went, but it's about a king. It's a family film, sort of, in a way. But I mean, everybody had this specific film that just impacted them. And for me, after that, I just didn't care anymore. I'm like, the King's Speech is a fantastic film. So they would let me rent that film at the video store, but they wouldn't let me buy the film, which makes no sense to me whatsoever. But and but for a Christmas film, what's your favorite Christmas film of all time, or do you have a top 5 that you watch every single year with your kin and everything?
4. I would say there's 4, and one with for some people, I know it's fighting words, but that's Die Hard. There's always a debate: Die Hard, a Christmas film.
It is a Christmas movie.
It's a Christmas film.
It is.
To me, what makes a Christmas movie or not a Christmas movie is it's got to be more than just set at Christmas time.
Yeah.
Christmas needs to play a role in the plot, and I feel that often, even with the movies that I do, you could take any generic rom-com and throw a Christmas tree in the scene, and it's a Christmas movie. But Christmas, you really want to do a movie where Christmas plays a part of that story. And I would say that Christmas, coming together at Christmas, being with your spouse, reuniting with your spouse, Christmas definitely plays a part of that movie. I would argue that Christmas plays a bigger part in Die Hard than it does in, say, Gremlins. Yes, Gremlins is set at Christmas time, and I guess technically Gizmo is a Christmas present. But theoretically, I think you could take Gremlins and set it, in the 4th of July, which is, I think, more or less what they did in the sequel.
Yep.
And it wouldn't make a difference. I mean, the movie would be pretty much unchanged, except maybe the Christmas tree scene. So
Die Hard, he shoots a guy, and then he writes on him, "Ho ho ho."
Yeah, I have that sweatshirt at home, and I'm careful not to wear it in public because I don't want to give people the wrong idea. But so Die Hard, Christmas Story is another one. That was a movie that I missed in the theater. I was supposed to go with my neighbor and my parents. that was one film they were like, no, I don't know if this is a kid's movie, whatever. So I didn't get to go with him, and I saw it on HBO
Mm-hmm.
and just discovered it, and that was the movie we watched all the time when I was a kid. Home Alone
Yeah.
is another one, and Christmas Vacation you
Yeah.
mentioned. I'm a fan of the vacation films. I did get to produce a film that Chevy Chase was in, and that was a real treat getting to meet him. But to me, Christmas Vacation just stands apart in that whole franchise as its own thing, and it just takes on a life of its own. And you don't have to have seen another one of those movies. It's probably better if you haven't, because it's tonally so different
Yep.
than the other one. But it is such a wonderful film. And again, somebody asked me, what's the plot of the movie, and it kind of doesn't have one. I mean, it's more about a feeling and about family and
Yeah.
togetherness. There really is no. There's a bunch of little plots, but I mean,
Yeah. I
it
mean,
have a plot in the way that Die Hard or Home Alone or
Hell for the Polar
Christmas
Express or
Vacation.
something.
It's very interesting. It's kind of a plotless movie, but perfect in that. You know.
Yeah. With that film, everybody has a favorite scene. What's your favorite from that film?
Um, uh, Probably the one that for me that always just at the end it's how all of the plot strands come together.
Mhm.
Like there's no real like overarching plot. There's a bunch of little subplots,
Yeah.
but the way that film brings everything together in the finale, from the nosy neighbors to the Scroogey boss to Clark's just complete bonkers craziness to the Christmas lights to the crazy cousin in the RE. It all like it's just a perfect finale where everything comes together and just completely explodes.
Yep.
It's just a masterclass in comedy structure.
And then we sing the Star Spangled Banner at, at the very, very end. We were watching something, and my mom goes, "The Polar Express is on." I'm like, "Yeah, turn it on." I said, "Okay." Immediately afterwards, I'm like, I have a feeling there's something on. One channel down, it was this film, and I'm like, we have to. She has never seen the whole movie before,
Okay.
and the whole time, I've seen that movie 20,000 times. I was just watching her,
Mhm.
and a couple of scenes, she goes, "Why is this funny?" I'm like, just wait. We get to the cat scene where he plugs it in that tree, and the cat just boof.
Mhm.
She loses her mind, and then grandma comes in. Oh my lord, she loved her. Just that this movie can speak to anybody,
Mhm.
and I don't know anybody who hates this film at all.
No.
But I mean, so is this the one that's your top one?
Probably Christmas Story, just because that's
Correct.
the one that was so important and so present in my house growing up, that it was a
Mhm.
big thing every year that we would watch it, and as a family. And it was just, yeah, I mean, that's the one I've seen like 200 billion times.
Yeah.
And yeah, probably Christmas Story.
And are you a TV show fan? What's your favorite show that you either grew up watching, or that you just shove on when you need something quick, that you just know and love?
um Yeah, it's funny. There's so much stuff out there now. It's kind of hard to become a diehard fan in the way that you used to, because I remember as a kid sitting down with my dad and watching like Star Trek: The Next Generation, every, it was, on syndication, and I don't know if it was like Saturday nights at 7 or whenever it was on, but that was something that we would watch, every week and stuff. And because when you're a kid, there's everyone has those 2 or 3 shows that you watch, and you look forward to the start of the new season, because now you're gonna get to see. And a lot of the stuff that I grew up watching in syndication, because that's what was on the TV at 5 o'clock in the afternoon every day. So it was,
Yep.
Buck Rogers, Battlestar Galactica, A-Team, Knight Rider.
Yep.
Those were the shows that I grew up watching. And now it's just so much stuff. You just go from one to the other. It's like, okay, I finished Inventing Anna. Now I'm going to go watch The Diplomat. And then I finished that. Now I got to go watch The Penguin. I finished that. Now I got to go watch The Franchise. I finished that. Now I got to go watch Africa All Along. I finished that. Now I got to go watch Andor. I finished that. Now I got to go watch. It's like you're just bouncing from show to show to show. There's still, there's there's a bounty of great material. Love, Strange New Worlds, Star Trek show. Love, Stranger Things. Love, the Game of Thrones series. Both of them. Love. I enjoy. I enjoy watching The Diplomat for its crazy sense of humor and stuff. I mean, there's just stuff, but it's just there's always something new, and I don't know that any one show gets the chance to dominate the way it used to. Maybe Stranger Things, because it became a phenomenon, or Game of Thrones became a phenomenon. But most shows don't get the chance to become those phenomenons anymore, because there's just so much stuff. And that's not even including The Merry Gentleman, which everyone has to be watching at 3:30 in the morning.
Exactly. What? What do you mean? There's a new season of this out, and I'm like, no. You have to see Chad Michael Murray with his shirt off at 3:30 in the morning. It is a family adventure. I mean, bring your whole entire mom and dad. It's a grandma movie and everything else. But with shows that I grew up on, I grew up with older shows. My mom was like, you can watch a kid show every once in a while, but I want you to be a little bit cultured, is what she called it. So I'd wake up at 6:30 in the morning every single day on TBS, and it was Mama's Family was on, or I'd come home at 4:30 on, I think it was TV Land. They went from the Andy Griffith Show to Mr. Ed to Happy Days. And my mom goes, you're going to watch these shows. I said, okay. She opened it up, and now I have a massive collection of older shows. And when anybody comes over, they're like, why do you have All in the Family? I'm like, because it's a good show. Have you seen it? No, why? I said, that show pushed the boundaries before any other show even did. So, I mean, with shows now, I watch a couple shows every single week, but there's just so much stuff where not one show is like, it's this show is the big thing for like 6 months now. And most shows now, hate to say it, aren't 22 episodes. They're mostly 8 to 10 episodes, which is fine and all. But if you did a series, what type of a show would you make?
I probably would do a serialized show, because for me that's what gets me involved in a show and hooked on a show. And I actually like the shorter seasons. When it comes time to rediscover shows that I've never watched, there's nothing more daunting to say, okay, this show's got 6 or 7 seasons and they're all 22 episodes long. Holy God, I'm just not gonna binge that. It's just too intimidating. But you bring up a good point. I feel like, with the death of syndication and the move towards streaming, I'm not sure that kids today are discovering Mama's Family, Happy Days, Mr. Ed. I mean, we were just talking the other day. Do kids today, do they know what Gilligan's Island is? Have they ever heard of Gilligan's Island? Have they ever watched the Brady Bunch? We did one of the films that I wrote with Marla and that Marla directed,
Blending
was a
Christmas.
reunion of the Brady Bunch, and that was probably my childhood come to life, being on that set with all of them, and they were all so great and warm, and it was just fantastic growing up watching them every day. But would a kid today know the Brady Bunch? And I don't think they would. Nobody's streaming. I don't. So I think unfortunately, a lot of those shows are going to get forgotten in the streaming generation, and I'm not sure that it keeps them alive. I still remember being in the theater with one of my assistant directors. We went to the movies, and I don't remember what we went to see. It might have been a re-release of Dune, the newer one, not the. Although I dragged him to that too.
Yeah.
But I remember that, and the trailer came on for The Fall Guy.
Yeah.
And I turned to him, and I said, I wonder how many people in this theater are even aware that there was a Fall Guy television show. He looks me in the face and says, there was a Fall Guy television show?
What? You work in the industry, my man.
Where do you find a Fall Guy television show in this day and age? You don't. It's not on Disney Plus or Max or whatever. I don't know. I mean,
well, I mean,
we've lost the generation. So I think that's just pop culture had changed, and the way we ingest these shows are changed. And I'm not sure that Nick at Night is still a thing, but I'm pretty sure if it is, they're probably not showing I Love Lucy anymore.
No. It's mostly three or four shows, and about 80% of it is Friends, which I'm fine with. That's my favorite show of all time. It's just like a comfort to me. But even then, showing Friends from 8 p.m. at night to 2 a.m. in the morning, and then Mom, and I think they show the Connors now and stuff like that. But when I was younger, it wasn't even the older shows. Most of it was like 1:30 in the morning. Lopez was on, which I mean that was a fever dream at 1:30 in the morning with like everyone just jumping on down a trampoline and stuff like that in a wheelchair. No less. But
I am going to have to wrap this up if that's okay. I'm getting a lot of stuff I have to take care of. But I've enjoyed this experience. It's been wonderful getting to know you and chatting.
And one final thing is, would you ever want to come on for your next film when it has a date?
Yeah, I will send you some information on when the next one is, and we can talk more.
And thank you guys. And as always, like and subscribe if you're new. I'm hoping my next interview is later today, and it'll just be me again. But hopefully the next time I have my co-hosts. And as always, guys, like and subscribe and keep your heart full of Hallmark.